I literally recorded this whole video right before this in slow-mo by accident, and I tried to edit it to make it better, but it just made the quality worse. So here I am again doing the video. Second time's a charm, so let's get into it. What is up, YouTube? It is Jessie back to you on my channel, and today I'll be discussing spiritual healing and the healing journey. Yes, I'm in a different outfit, different makeup, different everything. It's a different day, but I have a special announcement that I really want to announce before we get into the video. I have an announcement of what I just launched on my website. I have some very high vibrational thrifted clothes that I recycled and tie-dyed, and I put some sacred symbols on that. I wanted to personally use the flower of life as the symbol for my clothing because right after I got this flower of life tattoo, my life took a big turn in the greatest way possible. I've talked to a few other people who also got, sorry my dog just jumped a bit, who also got the flower of life tattoo or some type of sacred symbol on their body, and afterwards their whole life shifted. So I wanted to incorporate that symbol into my tie-dye clothes. Also, I made some jars with some special herbs into it. I've been studying the magic of herbs for some time now, and I've seen a lot of success with it with my own journey of using specific herbs for different type of healing properties. Wanted to make a little type of bath jar thing that you guys can charge under the new moon, full moon, or just use overall, and you can apply it to your bath. You can put a few drops into your cleaning solution. You can put some on your body. You know, you can give some to your plants to promote growth, all of these different things. And I, basically added a lot of little special herbs, and 2 mystery crystals are added to every single jar. I'm literally so fucking excited about that one, so please feel free to check it out. And yeah, I always appreciate you guys to support my small business, and as always, I'm always doing mediumship readings, so you guys can all check all of that out on my website. But yeah, let's get back to the video. Thank you guys, bye. In my previous video, you should definitely go watch that if you haven't. I talked about the different stages of spiritual healing, shadow work, ancestral work, stuff like that. It can really help you also gain more clarity over your own path. This is going to be more directed towards like what the healing looks like and what it feels like when you're doing trauma healing and connecting to your inner child and ancestral work. I have a few notes that I'm going to be discussing in this video, just really important ones that you guys should be aware of when you're, beginning your journey. At the end of the video, I'll just be talking about personal experiences, and you guys can just bounce right off of that. So without further ado, let's get into it. So to start this video, we have to talk about the beginning, when you first experience a spiritual awakening. This is what I like to call an activation. This basically, completely shifts your consciousness in a whole different perspective, and you start to actually view your life in a whole different way. This is what really triggers awareness, and this is what triggers, your higher self to be more present. It's because you're starting to expand your knowledge. Whenever someone experiences a spiritual awakening, they start to dive deep into like spirituality, spiritual knowledge. I call it like basically Alice in the Wonderland. You're diving deep into the rabbit hole. That's what I experienced when I first had a spiritual awakening. I was so curious about everything. I was constantly doing research over spirituality and gaining more knowledge about it, and this is what really triggered my awareness, and it started to trigger my overall energetic field. I started to actually rise my vibration to help me shift in the way that I needed to. When you expand your knowledge, you are basically expanding your remembrance. You are starting to remember a lot more about your soul's purpose and why you're here and why all of this is happening the way it is. It also connects you more to your higher self. It connects you more to the divine. It can start, really expanding your way of seeing the signs the universe is constantly giving you. It's starting to make you feel more sensitive to different energies and yourself. So really, by the beginning is really the most important part of a spiritual awakening. It's almost like that foundation that we need in order to, really build farther up than that. When you start to, expand your knowledge and remember a lot more, your higher self is a lot more present, and your higher self starts to guide you a lot more closely. It's no longer suppressed by the unknowing. It's more of just like you're getting yourself ready to start your spiritual healing journey. And this usually, like in my case, my spiritual healing, my shadow work started a year after I had my spiritual awakening. It's different for everyone. Everyone has a different path. There's no wrong or right way when it comes to this type of stuff. But that's what just happened for me. Okay, so let's get into spiritual healing and what it feels like and what it looks like and all that good stuff. I will just be kind of telling you guys little stories about my own personal healing journey and how I went about it and how it happened for me. I talked about this in my previous video, but I had my Kundalini awakening back in October of 2018. That's when you basically activate all the suppressed energy and trauma and karma in the base of your spine and you push it up to your conscious mind. It's a very strong awakening that can happen to someone. When it happened to me, I literally felt like my whole body was being like electrified, like my whole body was vibrating really intensely. I got shots of energy up my spine. Like I literally physically feel it. Like usually someone will physically feel when they have a Kundalini awakening, but basically this is a really intense awakening that can happen to someone. It helps them start to bring even further awareness of themselves, of the things that's hiding in the depths of their subconscious mind. I started my healing basically like 2 months after I had my Kundalini awakening, and my first ever healing thing was kind of divinely brought to me. And that's another thing that I want to talk about. Everything is pre orchestrated by you before you come here, before you incarnate here. And that's why, side note, I believe that deja vu is really just your soul remembering the thing that you've already seen before you came here. Basically, you already orchestrated your healing journey and how you want to go about it, what situations you want to be placed in, so you can trigger that emotion, that triggers awareness, that triggers healing. And that's the cycle of healing. Is the universe will divinely place you in a situation that will trigger a past emotion, and since you're in a higher perspective now, since you rise your vibration, since you dive deep into spirituality, since you just have a whole different perception of yourself, you can start now viewing this trigger, this emotional trigger that you've always had, in a whole different light. And that awareness will start to bring you into healing. And this is what happens. So like, you're experiencing a spiritual awakening only purely to have more awareness over yourself outside of yourself. In January of 2019, that's when I started doing twin flame healing, and I was divinely placed in a situation that triggered my attachment very, very deeply. And that attachment took me directly out of that inner peace, that nirvana that I've been seeking for since I've been on the spiritual path. It was just like, it's like, oh, like this isn't right. Like, this doesn't feel right. What can I do to fix this? And that awareness brings you into the spiral of healing. And usually when this starts, people normally experience, for me, I also experienced this, where I felt like a downward spiral of really heavy emotions. Because in order to heal, you have to feel it. And when you're healing past traumas, attachments, anything, you have to basically revisit the whole memory, the whole emotion all over again in order to truly heal it. And this is what's so painful about shadow work, is because it's not just you doing yoga and breath work and journaling and like you getting through it. It's basically you have to actually feel it all over again in order to understand it on a much deeper level. When I first started my spiritual healing, I was healing this for 4 weeks. And luckily for me, again, all up to the universe, is very divine, but I had to house sit for a month straight. And that's when I first started my healing journey. So I was in isolation, I was in the mountains, I was in a cabin, I was with 2 dogs, and I had my time to really focus on the thing that I needed to heal, and it was so beautiful. But I spent that 4 weeks basically in agony, because I was like having to revisit these old emotions that has always been there. I just hadn't been aware of it before. When you are deep into your healing, this basically looks like you laying in your bed, you not wanting to move. If you deal with escapism and addiction, this is something I want to talk about because it's very serious. Ever since I was young, and even in my past life, I dealt with escapism issues, drug addiction, stuff like that. And my distraction episodes will come up so much more intensely when I would start to heal, because our whole life was so used to distracting, the pleasure, pain cycle, because we just don't know how to heal yet. So we go to outside external substances to help us mend our emotions, help us get through it. But when you're on a spiritual healing journey, it's almost like all of that is intensified, because your awareness is going to be really annoying, because you're almost like calling yourself out on your bullshit while you're continuing to do the bullshit, but you can't stop because you don't know how to heal yet. And this is what happened for me in the beginning of my journey. I spent a much longer time during my healing periods, my shadow work periods, because I wasn't able to ever confront my pain. It was very, very hard. I never learned to really be there for my emotion from a young age. When it comes to your own healing periods, the biggest thing to look out for is when you have that moment of clarity, when you have that moment, that situation that triggers this awareness of this pattern within you, you know, and then you start to feel shitty after that. That's healing. That's when you know you are starting to heal. It's because, you know, you started to think about something in a whole different light that's always been there in your life, and you're actually starting to like microscope it. You're starting to look at it. When you're doing shadow work, think of it as like a dark hallway with a bunch of different rooms in it that have never been touched, never been looked at. All the doors are locked, but they have little windows in it. And when you start to heal a certain trauma, you're going into a flashlight and you're shining your light into the door, and that's when you start to bring awareness. You're like, oh shit, there's something in here that I haven't looked at yet. And then you open the door. And when you start to do healing work, it's like you looking into this room, you're using a flashlight, it's just a dark room, you can't really see the whole room, but you're looking at it at a much deeper perspective. You're actually into the darkness. And no matter how much time it takes for you to do the shadow work, you're kind of like just like walking into the room, looking at the room, and then finally, when you get to that point in your healing shadow work journey, everyone eventually reaches that breakthrough. The moment of clarity, the moment of actually having that motivation, that push, that just that awareness, that clarity of like how you can get through it. And the way I view it is literally you finding the light switch and pulling it down, and finally you can see the whole room for how it is. You have to be really patient with yourself when you're doing healing, is because like you eventually will reach that breakthrough. But there's always that trial period of having to heal and feel it over again in order to understand it on a deeper level. And another way to look at this is basically understanding that suffering brings compassion, yin yang. We need the good and the bad in order for that to work out, and we need the bad and the good in order for that to work out. And all of it kind of submerges together when you're doing shadow work. You kind of need those dark days. You kind of need those days where you can't move from your bed. You need those days when you can't stop hysterically crying. You need those days where you can't stop binge eating or smoking or drinking, just so you can understand your distractions, your traumas, your wounded child even on a much deeper level, because you're starting to experience it head on, but in a whole different perspective. Another thing with healing is never structured. You can never be like, okay, so I'm gonna heal this trauma, let me just journal it down and write it down. It doesn't work like that, and then you're healed. It doesn't work like that. It's always the awareness of a situation, of a trigger, and then you start to actually feel it all over again. And that's why shadow work is very dark. And a lot of people who have done shadow work will say this, they will agree with me on this, that they had to go and feel those emotions again. And it's really gnarly. It's not easy, but it's very, very transformative. You know, you actually start to really build a closer connection. I just saw a light orb when I said that. Confirmation. But when you start to really heal, and when you continue your healing journey, you actually start to really see the potential of your growth, and you start to see your higher self in physical form. And that's the most addicting part of the spiritual path, is that when you really start to heal and get through certain things because of your expanded awareness of over spirituality, the human mind, traumas, behaviors, things like that, your higher self starts to become a lot more present in your physical reality, and you start to see them kind of in your everyday life. And this is very addicting because you start to access the bliss state a lot more. The bliss state is the most addicting part of the spiritual journey, because usually when you're going through a period of really dark healing and integration and reflection, you eventually hit that bubble where it's either in the middle of your healing journey or the end, and you get to that state of bliss. You start to feel that overwhelming feeling of connectiveness, of nirvana. And mind you, this is something to also be mindful of, is that when you begin your spiritual journey, you actually start to feel the feeling of nirvana, of inner peace, of true contentment, because you are expanding your knowledge, you are expanding your awareness, and you are also rising your vibration. But when you go through healing periods, you are actually releasing more of the blocks that is preventing you from feeling that state of nirvana, of peace. And so when you get to that bliss state after a healing period, it's so much more potent. It's so much more intense because you can actually dive deeper into it. I also talked about this a couple times where on the spiritual healing journey, it's like all an act of remembrance. You're remembering more and more of your soul, of your higher self, your spirit guides. You start to connect with, I pointed over there because my spirit guide is literally chilling right over there. I can see him. You start to connect more to all these deeper aspects of yourself because you're remembering more. And the way I always say this, and I might have said this in, yeah, I did say this in a previous video, but it's literally like a tube. And when you have trauma and you have past life trauma and you have all this gunk and it's like shoved in the tube, you can't see from the other side. And when you're doing shadow work, you're literally like pulling out the gunk and more as you go. And the more further you pull out, the deeper that you can see into it. And that's when you start to expand your awareness over your past lives. And you start to actually remember certain things that you never remembered before. It's really, really cool. It's one of the coolest parts of the spiritual awakening, honestly. So yeah, basically to end this video, it's not ever structured. You don't have to go seeking for the things that you need to heal. It's all pre-orchestrated by you, by your spirit guides. And so you just kind of have to ride the wave. You just have to go with it. You just have to flow with it. And just trust that no matter what, you are still on the right path. You are being divinely guided. Just my biggest recommendation is to expand your knowledge of spirituality. Just if you're curious about something, look it up and do more research about it, because this is only going to expand your awareness farther into your higher self, so your higher self can be more present, so your higher self can guide you much more closely, tapping more into your intuition, doing intuition practices and stuff and exercises. This can also help you, you know, get more deeper into your higher self. My other chair. Okay. Alright, well, that's the video. Shaky camera. Ooh. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys got some clarity from it. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, just please comment down below and let me know. I always keep my Instagram listed in the description. And if you ever want a personal reading from me, I can do that. I have my website linked down below as well. You can even go on my Instagram, it's linked in my bio, and order a reading whenever you feel drawn to. But I really appreciate you guys to check out this video. Thank you so much. Peace.